Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions. The conference room in their office. I mean, hello, this guy literally moved in. He moved in, right? He moved in and he lived there for months. And he went down to the assembly line for 15, 18 hours a day and would walk up and go, what's that? And why is that part of this? And if the engineer that designed it and required it be in the car couldn't give him the right answer, he was fired and the part never went in the car. They had massive problems with assembly line. They were about to go bankrupt. Okay. They had massive, massive problems. Now, in that deal, he put all of that in. Total intensity, total uncomfortable, the whole thing. Nothing like the billionaire lifestyle, right? I mean, guy owns his own jet, and yet he's there living at the assembly plant. He figures out in 3 months how to turn it around. And he goes to and he'd gone to the board and he said, look, don't pay me. Don't pay me. We're going bankrupt. Don't pay me. But if I get this thing turned around and we hit these numbers, you're going to pay me. So his pay package is $58 billion. So you know what the board is doing? They're suing him right now. Okay. Do you know why the board is suing him? Because they weren't living on the roof of that assembly plant. They weren't living on the floor of that conference room.
That's right.
They didn't stop their life for 3 months and do nothing but that. By the way, he did the same thing with SpaceX. Same thing. So he has his moments, right, where he just does what you guys did on that scale, right? Where he just goes in and he gets his hands dirty and he figures it out.
He pushes through it.
Yeah. But it's that intensity, right? It's that desire. It's that drive. That's the thing that nobody talks about. What makes you and your wife exceptional is that drive, that desire, that intensity, and then following through on it. That's a big, big deal.
No, I appreciate that. And just the framing through the lens of entrepreneurship. And Musk is one of those hardcore entrepreneurs you have to give credence to, right? And so, one thing I do want to share though, Mike, you and I chatted about this a little bit offline beforehand, and you made me think of this. When it comes to mentors, we talked about my dad personally, an absolutely vital part of my journey, which I think a lot of times, you hear folks' stories, particularly in entrepreneurship, and they tend to rag on the corporate world, right? Because it's got its trappings, right? Pros and cons for every walk of life. And I never cared about business growing up. I didn't. I thought music was amazing, as we talked about earlier, but I thought business was boring. I didn't understand why people cared about it that much, But I felt really lucky in hindsight. I just happened to take a job on a whim, found it on Craigslist after college. And I was like, let me go take this. I don't know if I'm going to be any good at it. It's just like an inside sales gig. And I was terrified. I'm not a sales guy. I'm an introvert by default. I really am. And I don't have the mental energy, emotional energy to do that stuff all day. I take it. I happen to be in an environment to meet this guy who ended up becoming a mentor for my life. Like, we still text every day. And, this mentor ultimately had a profound impact and got me indoctrinated into leadership. And I don't mean like get promotions, which eventually that did happen, but I mean, you know what I mean for the listeners. Like, that means like appreciating leadership as a craft, and management as a craft, but more importantly, leadership. And that I kind of fell in love with it. And I was like, wow, this is something where you can positively impact people's lives. And it comes down to so many core principles about authenticity, about being able to set a vision, about helping people work through challenges, about all these different wonderful things. And I bring that up here because I had the benefit going into these discussions with my co-founder and my wife, COO, Jennifer. We both went through our own separate careers, and we both had the language of business. And that is, to be fair, a really massive advantage because
Yeah.
we have like a common language. When all else fails, we can just put on our business hats,
Right.
and we can talk about stuff through a lens that is common language, common ground, even though they
Yeah.
were totally different careers, totally, but both in business, And
Yeah.
so I just wanted to share that because that mentor also gut checked me so many times when I was being too ego heavy, when I was being driven for the wrong reasons, when
Mhm.
when I needed to have the ability to self-assess more clearly
Mhm.
because I wasn't seeing things for what they are.
Right.
And just the general theme I think is key because you can't take your next step effectively unless you know very clearly where you stand. And
Right.
I think that is one massive advantage of having mentors in your life who will sit there and humble you directly to your face.
Yeah. Yeah. We were just having this conversation the other day about, because I was talking to my wife about, I teach. And one of the things that I absolutely love to do is I love to get up in front of a group and have people look at me and go, "Oh, I get it."
Mm,
Like all of a sudden, right? All these different seminars they've gone to, all these classes they've gone to, all this kind of stuff, and all of a sudden it registers, right?
yes,
And it's absolutely true. When the student's ready, the teacher will appear. It's absolutely the truth, right?
yes.
And so what we were talking about, so um, I have a number of people over the years that I've mentored, and some of them are the sons of people that have worked with me in real
Oh,
estate,
that's amazing.
right? Worked with my companies, that kind of thing. And this one in particular, I was telling her about, um, he went to his dad, this young kid, 18 years, or well, he's 22, pardon me. He just graduated from UCLA, goes to his dad and he says, "Okay, I've graduated. I've got my degree. I want to go into real estate." And he goes, "If you want to go into real estate, you need to talk to Mike Litton. Let
That's
me
nice
see
to
if I
hear.
can get him. Let me see if I can find out if he's got time." Right. And so he reaches out to me and says, "Hey, my son Justice, who you met when he was 3, okay, my son Justice has graduated from UCLA." First of all, I couldn't believe the kid was even a teenager, let alone 22. Right. He's already graduated from college, and he's like, and he wants to go into real estate. And I told him that he needs to work with you. Do you have time to work with him? I was, absolutely.
Mm,
Absolutely. If I don't have the time, I will find the time. I'll make the time. We'll make this work. But here's the thing. I'm talking to my wife about this, and she's like, "Oh, well, then, it must be a real ego thing to work with these kids and help them succeed." And he just bought a brand new Porsche, just had it delivered. Okay.
mm.
The expensive kind. Okay.
Yeah, good for him.
Had it done on social media, so they filmed it and all this stuff, right? He has a new multi-million-dollar home that he's purchased. All this. His kid is a raving success. Okay, and nobody's prouder of him than me. Okay, and I explained to her. I said, this has nothing to do with ego.
That's right.
It has everything to do with paying it forward. And it seems to me that it's a running theme in our podcast where we talk about people that have come into our lives that were mentors. And I explained to her, I said, Joe McCarrow pulled me aside one day in 1993. Okay. Pulled me aside one day. I thought he was kicking me out of his office. I thought I was in trouble. He asked me to walk him to his car. Okay. I walked him to his car. We got halfway to his car in the parking lot. And I said, "Joe, whatever it is I did, I won't do it again. Please don't kick me out of my office." He's like, "I'm not kicking you out of my office. I'm saving you. Get over here." Right. So I go over to his car. We're standing at the back of his car. And he said, "You're going about this all wrong." What? This is one of the quietest people you've ever met in your life. Okay. He does not say anything. Like he'll stand in a room, talk about an introvert. He'll stand in a room and he won't have a conversation with anybody unless he wants to. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, he is right. And so it was like, this guy was, I was intimidated. Right. And he goes, "I believe from knowing you for the last 2 weeks that you're somebody who wants to be a captain of the industry. You're somebody who wants to be the best of the best. You're somebody who wants to run things one of these days. Well, now
Mm,
you're playing my tune." Okay. Now he's got my attention. And he said, "And you're going at this completely wrong. Here's what you need to do." And he told me what to do. And to my credit, I listened and I went to work. Like I literally left him and I went to work doing exactly what he told me to do. Do you know 2 years later, I was one of the top producers in the nation, one of the top producers in the nation in the mortgage industry. And it was all because of what Joe McCarroll spent 10 minutes telling me.
Yeah, incredible.
Joe's not here anymore. But what I was explaining to my wife was, I said, listen, for all the Joe McCarrolls in this world, all the people that have, my grandfather, okay, was like a father to me, all the people who came into my life, who mentored me when they didn't have to, when they didn't have the time to, right?
Right.
I do this in honor of them because this is about paying it forward.
That's right.
Right? You find somebody that you think might be going, a young person that might be going, right? I believe you have a duty to pull them aside and go, hey, you may not want to hear this, right? But this is going on. And I want you to know there's a better way to do this. If you're interested, I'm here. Right. So this young kid that I was telling you about that I mentored sent me one of the nicest letters I've ever received from anybody, talking about working with me and talking about what his experience was like with me mentoring him. And it really got to me. Okay.
I'm sure.
I just want people to understand that we are going through what we're going through so that we're being prepared to then go out and mentor people and help them. Okay. And I think it's incredibly important that we have that conversation and that we take the time, even if we don't have the time, to invest in them. So that's my thing. So anyway, so you work with all these tech companies. You have this weekend with your wife where you decide to shift, right? Talk about what happens after that weekend and where you are today.
Gosh, so much happened. In hindsight, it sounds so clear in stages, right? But that's not how it ever goes.
Yeah.
We walked out of that weekend going, cool, we've got this goal. That's how much money we want to have coming in by that year. And I was like, well, what do I do? What do I do next?
What's first? What's second? What's right?
Yeah. Like I'm a process guy. I have to do that. I have to give myself structure. Otherwise I can't get anything done. I'm grateful, so incredibly grateful that the universe kind of presents you stuff, similar to when the mentor reveals itself to you. Right. I kid you not, like around that same time, same mentor, this is like 10 years after I first connected with this guy. He nudges me into a new company, new role, saying, hey, I really think you should take a look at this role. It was actually at a lender that was a tech company and a lender doing fix and flips. And I had no idea what that meant, candidly. I knew from maybe early days, but I didn't really know what it meant to do rehabs and flips and all that stuff.
Right.
And I had to go in and lead and turn around the origination group for this team. I didn't know what origination meant. Right. And I knew leadership. I knew hiring. I'd done hundreds of it. I mean, hundreds of hiring, lots of operations stuff, lots of sales stuff. And, but he brought me in and I had to go in and learn that in depth, all the ins and outs, got licensed as an MLO, licensed originator, like all this stuff, to then just be able to earn the credibility of the people on this team. So they didn't think I was a total joke. Some still did. But that's what leadership's about, is getting into tough conversations with people who don't like it at first and then helping them see the light. Right. And ultimately, I was there for 3 years and three years and change. And in that time, I was sitting there going, okay, I see the zero. I mean, I saw the financial outcomes. I saw how many zeros are coming on this transactions from the inside of this for these really successful real estate investors, and I'm sitting there going, well, if that person can do it, what's stopping me? And then the real potent thing though, honestly, Mike, is I saw a few guys that were reporting to me, incredible dudes, just like incredible professionals. And they were done with their day jobs, working incredibly hard, 10-hour days. And then 3 of them in particular stuck around at the end of the day. And they stuck around, lights were going off, and they were still working there for hours. Eventually, after weeks and weeks of that, I was sitting there going, what are they doing? And they were building a company that ultimately allowed them to go off and do that full time within about a year. And I'm sitting there going, well, if they can do that, why can't I do that? But I didn't want to be a flipper. I can't swing a hammer whatsoever. But I knew there was something there, and it meant eventually wanted to go invest in some real estate ourselves. So, we bought a local rental in the West Coast. I know you're on the West Coast, overpaid for that. The first one you do, it's typically like that for rookies. Putting down $430,000 for $200 a month in cash flow is not a cash flow win.
Kind of.
But ultimately, we learned our lesson and just took the whole damn summer driving around to find that one property. We're like, this is not scalable. Wait, built up a portfolio of rentals, single family rentals in the Midwest. Way better economics. Thankfully, learned along every one of these stages about what passive income is not. Buying rentals, I don't care what people say, that is not a passive income stream. Even if you got a manager, that's hard work. And so we built up a portfolio of rentals. We then eventually were like, okay, my operations and corporate brain could just wrap my head around bigger spreadsheets, basically, and bigger economics. So we started to go buy bigger properties, along with folks that I met and built partnerships with in other parts of the country, apartment buildings, self-storage facilities, big stuff that's big and boring sounding to most people. And ultimately that was my jam, because I think boring means predictable. And it showed me a path forward to be like, this is something we can look at. This is something we can, thankfully, put some of our capital into, because we worked so hard for over 13 years. We had some income, we had some money to invest, and that passive investment, that portfolio we started building, became the genesis of an investing club. And that investing club was never the plan. It was like, hey, people saying, I want to put my money in with you guys on that same deal. And it was like, well, Spencer, you're going to fly to that property. You're going to do the due diligence. You're going to be involved. Like, can you just do all that? And, we want to be passive. And that was the genesis of what became our business in Madison Investing, and there's tons of hard learnings. There's 4 or 5 coaching programs in there. There is 400 podcasts, at least within 18 months. There's 24 books read within the first 18 months. There's like all this stuff that is the work that you don't hear about. Finding hours to work on stuff when you got a full-time day job, all that stuff. And it sounds all glamorous, like, oh, we went and lived in another country and worked there for 5 to 6 weeks last 2 summers. Yeah. And folks only really hear, you went on a 5-week vacation. I'm like, no. We had a wonderful experience traveling the world with our boys now. And we figured out a way to do that over all of those steps and all the learnings, some of which were pretty damn painful, and I think that's, in a nutshell, if I had to give a whirlwind tour of how those 3 phases went, that's how we got into it.
So what were the top 3 resources that you found that helped you to succeed? So of all the 24 books, of all the materials, all the podcasts, seminars, I mean, I'm sure you went to a few of those, that kind of thing. What were the top 3?
Top 3, start with the book. Favorite book, business-wise, nonfiction. Essentialism by Greg McKeown. Excellent book. It just helps you learn how to say no in service of the biggest priorities. Literally, the first chapter of that book, by the way, very similar story to what you described in the hospital for the C-section. For the guy that wrote that book. We need to focus on what we got to do, right? Another one would be actually just coaching programs. Like, I think that is a very big ocean of stuff. You got to sift through, find ones worth paying for. I've used up to 4 of them. I'd say that I haven't had a bad experience, thankfully. I know some folks do. I have found that to be invaluable. And so that was the second resource. And to be specific, I only paid for stuff 4-digit, 5-digit numbers when I knew the one skill I wanted to get out of it. Right. Very deliberate. So coaching programs.
So which one was the top coaching program?
I'll just say, frankly, this has been over the course of years. So I don't even know if some of them are still around, but I'd say that one of them right off the bats was just like an underwriting. It means like analysis. I knew how to analyze small property, right? I knew how to look at single families, and I knew that in spades from my experience at day job. I didn't know how to analyze really effectively a 300, 400 unit apartment building in the middle of the Sun Belt.
Right.
That's a different beast. Similarities. That was key. I think for me personally, that was huge. The other one was basically overarchingly like how to go about and structure a big deal that you're putting together at that scale. Because I had done it in business, in corporate world. I'd never done that in real estate. So I'd say that those are the 2 types of coaching programs that I did at that second layer. But the third thing, to answer your first question, Mike, is like, it's just mentors and relationships, man. And it's not paid. It's about literally doing what everyone says out there when you're trying to carve a path forward in a different industry, different space. Find a way to add value to people. Don't pick their brain. Like there's nothing wrong, I guess, in the end for, I was that guy. I approached more successful people who I looked up to and said, "Hey, can I pick your brain?" Then I quickly got gut checked to say, "Don't do that. Don't do that." Like find a way to approach them with sincerity and say, "I think I can help you these ways. And I'm happy to do that. I don't care about getting paid. Just like just let me help you."
Right.
And going forward with that pay it forward ethos, like you were talking about earlier, was absolutely vital.
Yeah.
And went to some seminars, went to a bunch of local meetups and just
Okay.
talk to people and express where you're trying to go and trying to do it the right way. And so
Yeah.
it would be those three things.
And I want to make sure that I echo this because, there's, I get, and I'm sure this is a shocker to everybody, but I get a lot of phone calls and a lot of people that reach out to me that want to pick my brain.
Mm.
And what I've shared with them is it won't take long. It's slim pickings. Okay. After all these years of banging my head up against a wall, I've got 3 brain cells left and you're welcome to them,
Right.
but the long and the short of it is, um, I had a gentleman on a few weeks ago now that wrote his first book, and he happens to be married to a client of mine for the last 30 years. And that's how we know each other, right? As we met through her. And he wanted to pick my brain. And we ended up in a conversation because he's now working on his second book. He's been on the podcast, promoted his first book. Now he's working on his second book. He's going to come back on and promote that when it's ready to be released. But one of the things that we talked about was what he was missing. So he starts telling me about all these things that he's going to be doing in this book. And I'm like, okay, what about this? And he goes, well, I haven't decided whether I'm going to include that or not. Like, okay, talk to me. Why would you not include it? Because it's kind of the single most important part of what you're talking about, right? And all of a sudden he's like, you know what? You're right. I hadn't thought about it that way. I am a much bigger fan of how can I help you, right? What can I do? And if you look, Spencer, if you and I know we have a lot of episodes, but if you listen to almost any of our episodes, you'll find that the people who have done what you've done, where they've achieved at a very high level, okay, as they've lived their lives, they've been told no a lot. They've
Right.
had a lot of people slam doors in their face, physically, mentally, metaphorically and physically,
Both.
right? Yeah, and they got, their knees got skinned up, that kind of thing. But they figured out a way through, and a lot of times some of these people worked at night, all night long, to earn a living, and then showed up the next morning and worked for free just so they could learn from so and so, just so
Yes.
they could be around these people, right? Scott Mann, who is a retired Green Beret, wrote a book called Operation Pineapple Express about the Afghanistan withdrawal and the story of he and his comrades from former and current Green Berets helping to get these Afghan nationals that helped them in the war out when we pulled out of Afghanistan. The U.S. government wasn't going to bring them out, and these guys coordinated this task force Pineapple to get these people out. Okay. He wrote a book about it. So I reached out to him and said, hey, I loved your book. Well, he has a new book out that came out yesterday. It was released yesterday, called Nobody's Coming to Save You. It's a Green Berets guide to getting big SHIT done, right?
Love that title, man.
Oh, it's huge, right? I would highly recommend it. He's on to something. The thing is, we were talking about this, and he was talking about his life, and he was talking about how he ended up in the Army. He ended up in logistics. Logistics was the last place of the world he should be in. He got into the Army to be a Green Beret, but it takes years to get into the selection process. He ends up talking with a gentleman who becomes a mentor. Okay, he ends up talking with him, and he sees this commanding officer sees something in him, transfers him into the Green Beret detail, transfers him into the Green Berets, makes him an assistant. Okay. He said, Mike, I didn't any more qualified to be an assistant than the man on the moon, but he made me an assistant. What it did was it threw him in the mix.
Yeah.
And it taught him that Green Berets operate at this level. Logistics operates somewhere down below where you can see. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And all of a sudden, he rose to the occasion. he now had a spring in his step. He now had a higher standard. He now knew how he needed to operate and what he needed to do. That's the advantage of getting around people that are doing what you want to do. You get around those people and you spend time with them, right? But you've got to add value to them in addition to them adding value to you, right?
Yes.
It's a big, big deal. And I'm so glad that you brought that up, because it's, people want certain things from you, because when you've achieved at a high level, people want certain things from you, right? And I interviewed one of the top real estate investors in all of the world, and he's on my podcast, right? And one of the things that he said to me was, he said, Mike, and I don't even know if this was on the recording. This might have been off record, but he said to me, he said, if somebody came to me today and said, I want to work for free for you, if you'll mentor me, I'll work for free for you. I'll go out and check on all of your properties that are being remodeled and make sure that everything's getting done that's supposed to get done, and I'll report back to you. He goes, I'd do that in a New York second. And he goes, and do you have any idea how much I'd pour into those people? Okay. You're onto something. You're absolutely onto something. And it's absolutely vital. If you're coming up in an industry and you want to learn what that person's doing to succeed, it's not about what they can contribute to you. It's about what you can contribute first, and then they contribute in return. Does that make sense?
100%. And thank you for sharing that story.
You're
And by
onto,
the way,
you're
I'm gonna
onto
have to check out
something
that
here.
book now.
You're onto something here. And you really, I was even on social media this morning putting a link to scottman.com where you can go buy it. Okay. He's amazing. Absolutely amazing. And he's written a book that he's absolutely onto something. So thanks for letting me talk about that. So,
Yeah.
so now you guys have, is it an investment club that you're currently running?
Correct.
So talk about what you guys do. Let's say somebody, because by the way, we're in the middle. If you haven't read The Great Divide, read The Great Divide by Alan Nevin. Alan Nevin's a friend of ours and been on the podcast 3 times. And he's we're good friends. I'm one of his biggest fans. But he wrote a book and self-published it in 2017 called The Great Divide. We're in the middle of a $98 trillion transfer of wealth between baby boomers and their millennial kids and grandkids. Okay. 90% of it's real estate, and the millennials don't like real estate because when they were kids, 2008 happened, and they watched all these people around them that they loved lose their houses. And so they don't trust real estate. Not all of them, but a lot of them don't.
Right.
And so I'm actually writing a book about home ownership right now that literally is aimed at millennials to convince them that home ownership needs to be the American dream again. And they can get there from here. You with me?
I agree with that.
And how to do it. So it's pretty comprehensive, but it's going to be a good book, I think, for people. So talk about, let's say somebody is inheriting money. Let's say there's a baby boomer out there that's listening that we're in 52 countries now worldwide that is looking to transfer their wealth to their millennial kids or grandkids. Could they participate in this investment club with you?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and we have, hundreds of members that are actively investing along with us and stuff. But the key focus for me is that ultimately we wanted to just help people get down the same path that has been successful for us.
Sure.
And so at Madison Investing, it's very simple. That's what we do. We go out and we find stuff that we like but what I mean is hard assets,
right?
Apartment buildings, self-storage facilities, stuff that produces cash flow and that grows and it's predictable.
Yeah.
And over time, and we just invest our own money along with our members. But the big challenge is, as you can appreciate already, Mike, is that there's so many people out there offering these types of things. The hardest part of de-risking all this stuff is the who.
Yeah.
You can find a great market, you can find a great deal, but there's a lot of people out there who have no idea what they're doing, but they're happy to take your money, happy to take my capital. And unfortunately, I have been burned before, and I think some people have as well. And so once you've gone through that, you sit there and you sharpen your pencil. And that's ultimately what we aim to do, is just, we find great teams, strong partnerships, and people in states that we love where we invest. We invest in like Texas and in Georgia, in the Rockies, in these markets, and we find great teams doing great deals and we invest in them alongside our club members. And it's as simple as that, And so we have folks that are, back to your question, 3rd generation construction company owners out of Georgia, all the way out to the software engineer working at Apple for 8 years. Right. And different profiles of folks, all of which are just trying to say, where's the off ramp ultimately from this career that I'm in, or they just want to build some kind of future outcome for the generation coming next. So it's a labor of love, and just I feel very fortunate to be able to help people out on that path at Madison Investing.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And I love the fact that you're helping people make their money work for them.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you're doing it through real estate. And I love the fact that it's rental real estate that you're doing. One of the things that I tell people all the time is there are two activities that are the most incentivized in the federal tax code. The first one is owning a corporation and employing people, by far. The second one right behind it is owning rental real estate and renting it out.
Yes.
Because the federal government wants you to provide housing. They want you to provide an opportunity for people to be able to rent from you. Okay. It's a big, big deal. It's a big part of what makes this economic engine of America work. Okay. And the US, the United States Congress that designed all these laws, they designed it on purpose to make this incentive take place. The thing about it is, if you remember when Donald Trump was president, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and his family were excoriated by the mainstream media because they hadn't paid income taxes in decades. And Donald Trump said something along the lines of, good for them, right? Well, it's because they invested in real estate and they had enough depreciation to offset that income tax. And so they literally lived tax-free. If you're in a 40% tax bracket, state and federal, right, or 45%, you just got a raise of almost half.
Yes.
Right? If you design this correctly. Now, in your investment club, do people get to participate in the depreciation of the property?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, like you're hitting on the point that is one of those things that this is a complete apolitical comment. It's just about it's using the fullest potential of the current tax code legally, and so the answer is absolutely, and I think that that's been a huge strategy component in not just our own personal investing, but also the folks who are looking to be able to offset and defer some of those taxes, because I mean, particularly you and I can both relate to this. We live in California, man. It's you talk to some friends of ours, business partners that live in more tax-friendly states, and they sit there and go, wow, you want to come out here? And I'm like, well, we're sticking around. We have roots here, but there are still ways. There are still ways to be able to mitigate this. And that tax depreciation is a beautiful thing in the way it exists and is used for just investing in the right stuff.
Well, it's why there are more millionaires made in real estate than any other mode of investment by far. And it's important that people understand what it is and how it works and how it can, in fact, put you in a place to where you're financially free, right?
Yes.
If you could make 55% less, right? If you could make that amount of money less and be tax-free and still live, that's financial freedom, right? That's you being in charge of your financial freedom. And that's a big, big deal, I think. And what you're providing is absolutely invaluable. So let me ask you this. If somebody's listening to this and they're interested in working with Madison Investing, how do they contact you?
Yeah, they can find us just at our website. It's MadisonInvesting.com.
Okay.
Just big old link on there. Folks can just click that and set up a time to chat with me. And
we'll put a link. We'll put a link to your website in the episode description too.
Sounds great.
Okay. Spencer, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, likewise. It's just an honor. Really appreciate it, Mike.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate you. We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out Calendly.com/Rio760.